Her body trembled beneath his touch. My wife, the woman I vowed to love and cherish, the woman who swore she'd never betray me again. Yet, here she was, breathless, tangled in another man's arms. I thought the worst was over. I thought I had already survived the deepest cut. But I was wrong. Her affair wasn't just a chapter in our past. It was about to rewrite our future. Because now, she was pregnant, and I wasn't sure if the baby was mine. Before we dive into this heartbreaking journey, I want to thank all my incredible subscribers for your support. Your engagement keeps these intense, dramatic stories coming. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us for more gripping, real-life stories that will leave you speechless. Now let's begin. The sound of rain against the window matched the storm inside me. Olivia sat across from me at the dinner table, her hands resting over her stomach. The glow on her face should have made me happy. It should have meant a new beginning. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice hesitant. "Are you okay?" Was I okay? My wife was pregnant, and there was a chance the baby wasn't mine. Just a year ago, I had found out about Olivia's affair with Mark Anderson, a man I once called a friend. She swore it was over, swore she had cut him out of her life. I believed her. I chose to forgive her, to fight for our marriage. But now this, I pushed my plate away, no longer hungry. "Tell me the truth, Olivia." She blinked at me, feigning innocence. "What do you mean?" I exhaled sharply, trying to keep my temper in check. "You know exactly what I mean. Is the baby mine?" A flicker of panic crossed her face. It was quick, barely noticeable, but I caught it. "Lucas, don't do this." I let out a bitter laugh. "Don't do what?" "Ask if my wife's child is actually mine? That's a fair question, don't you think?" She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. The warmth of her touch repulsed me. "You're being paranoid," she said softly. "Am I?" I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Then say it. Say, without hesitation, that this baby is mine." She swallowed, her throat moving in a slow, deliberate motion. "Lucas, please." My chest tightened. That hesitation was all I needed to know. The baby could be Mark's. The room felt smaller, suffocating. The walls were closing in, pressing against my skull, making it hard to breathe. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I need some air." "Lucas." But I was already grabbing my keys, heading for the door. I needed to think. I needed to figure out how the hell I ended up here. Trapped in a marriage filled with betrayal, lies, and now, a baby that might not be mine. And worst of all, I had the sinking feeling Olivia was still hiding something. Something worse. The moment I saw Olivia standing in the dimly lit kitchen that night, something shifted in me. She had her back to me, her shoulders stiff, her hands gripping the edge of the counter like she was holding herself together. The air between us felt heavy, suffocating. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know just how deep the wound had already been cut. "Leave," I called softly, stepping closer. She flinched at the sound of my voice but quickly masked it, turning around with a forced smile. "Hey," she said, her voice light, too light. I wasn't convinced. Something was off. I stepped closer, watching her closely. "You okay?" She nodded too quickly. "Just tired." Lies. She wasn't just tired. I had been married to Olivia for 7 years. I knew her inside and out, or at least I thought I did. That night, something about her was different. She wasn't just exhausted. She was distant, closed off in a way I had never seen before. I wanted to press her, to ask what was really going on. But something in her eyes stopped me. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't stress. It was fear. Fear of what? The thought lingered in my mind for days after. Olivia had been acting differently for a while, but I had chalked it up to work stress, maybe just the routine wear and tear of marriage. But now I wasn't so sure. Then came the phone calls. At first, they were nothing unusual. Olivia's phone would buzz, and she'd step out of the room to take the call. Normal, right? But then I started noticing a pattern. The calls always came late at night when she thought I was asleep. When I asked who it was, she'd wave it off. Just a friend from work, she'd say. One night, curiosity got the best of me. I waited until she was in the shower, her phone left charging on the nightstand. I hesitated, staring at the screen like it held a truth I wasn't ready for. Then, as if on cue, it lit up with a name. Mark Anderson. A cold wave of something I couldn't name rushed through me. I knew that name. Olivia had mentioned him before, a coworker. Someone she worked with on big projects. But why was he calling her at midnight? I stared at the name, my heart pounding in my ears. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to unlock it. But I didn't. Instead, I let the phone sit there, its glowing screen mocking me. When Olivia came out of the bathroom, I pretended to be asleep. I felt her pause at the nightstand, probably seeing the missed call. A few moments later, I heard her slip back out of the room, the soft murmur of her voice in the hallway as she called him back. Something was wrong, and I needed to find out what. A week later, Derek and I met up for drinks. He was my best friend, had been since college. If there was anyone I could trust, it was him. "You look like hell," he said as I slid into the bar stool across from him. I let out a humorless chuckle. "Feel like it too." Derek signaled the bartender for another round.
Sul right, spill.
"What's going on?" I hesitated, then sighed. "It's Olivia. She's been acting different, distant. And there's this guy, Mark Anderson." Derek's expression darkened at the name, but it was so quick I almost missed it. "Her coworker?" I nodded. "She's been getting calls from him, late at night. She steps out of the room to talk to him." Derek shifted in his seat, taking a long sip of his drink. "Have you asked her about it?" I scoffed. "Yeah." She brushes it off. He was quiet for a moment before setting his glass down with a little too much force. "Look, man, maybe it's nothing. Maybe you're just overthinking it." But there was something in his voice, something uncertain. I narrowed my eyes at him. "Derek, do you know something?" His jaw tightened, and he shook his head. "No. I don't want you jumping to conclusions." I wasn't sure if I believed him. That night, I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. If Olivia wasn't going to tell me the truth, I would find it myself. She had fallen asleep early, exhausted from another long day at work, or so she claimed. I lay beside her in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. After a while, I slid out from under the covers and grabbed her phone from the nightstand. My hands trembled as I unlocked it. I scrolled through her messages, my stomach twisting with every notification. And then I saw them. Messages from Mark. "Mark, I can't stop thinking about last night. Mark, when can I see you again? Mark, does he suspect anything?" The world tilted. My breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. My worst fears, confirmed in a few short texts. She was cheating on me. A cold fury spread through my veins. My hands clenched into fists, the phone shaking in my grip. I turned to look at Olivia, peacefully asleep, as if nothing had happened, as if she wasn't lying to my face every single day. I wanted to wake her up, to confront her right then and there, but I didn't. Instead, I stood up, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I needed proof. More than just texts. More than just late-night phone calls. I needed to catch them. And when I did, Olivia would have no way to deny it. This wasn't over. The days following my discovery felt like a blur of forced smiles, cold silences, and the suffocating weight of unspoken words. Olivia moved around the house like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just shattered the very foundation of our marriage. And maybe, in her mind, nothing had. Maybe I was the only one drowning in the wreckage while she floated effortlessly above it. I told myself I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Something that, when thrown in her face, would strip away any chance of her twisting the truth. That's when I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I followed her. It started with something simple, checking her phone when she was in the shower. The passcode hadn't changed, which almost made me laugh. She had gotten careless. Or maybe she never expected me to doubt her. I scrolled through her messages, expecting to find nothing, expecting her to be smarter than this. But there it was, Mark's name, tucked between messages from her mother and some old college friend. My heart pounded as I opened the thread, my eyes scanning through the words like a man searching for air. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. I miss you already. I wish we had more time. The texts weren't explicit, but they didn't have to be. The meaning was clear. My wife was seeing him again. The affair I thought had ended was alive, thriving in the shadows while I played the fool. I copied the messages, sent them to myself. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I needed to have them. Evidence. A truth she couldn't deny. But I wasn't done. I needed to see it for myself. The next afternoon, I left work early and parked down the street from Mark's house. My fingers drummed anxiously on the steering wheel as I watched the front door, waiting for a glimpse of Olivia. My mind screamed at me to leave, to turn away before I saw something I could never unsee. But I couldn't. I had to know. Minutes passed, then an hour. Just when I started to think I was wrong, the door opened, and there she was. She stepped out onto the porch, her hair tousled, her lips curved into a smile that wasn't meant for me. Mark followed, standing too close, touching her arm in a way that sent a violent rage coursing through my veins. She leaned into him, said something that made him laugh, and in that moment it was obvious. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't some fleeting temptation she had fought against and lost. She was his. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to storm up there, drag her away, make her see what she was throwing away. But I didn't. Instead, I drove away, my vision blurred, my thoughts a whirlwind of betrayal and fury. That night, Olivia curled up next to me in bed, her body warm against mine. I felt nothing, just cold, empty space where love used to be. She sighed, her fingers brushing over my arm. "You've been distant lately," she whispered. "Is something wrong?" I turned to her, searching her face for any sign of guilt. But there was none. She was good at this. Lying, pretending, keeping secrets wrapped so tightly that even I had missed them for months. "Just work stress," I lied. She smiled softly. "We should go on a trip, just us. Get away from everything. Reconnect. Reconnect." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded. "Yeah, maybe we should." But in my mind, I was already planning something else. She thought she had me fooled. She had no idea what was coming next. The weight of Olivia's betrayal hung over me like a storm cloud that refused to break. Every moment in our home felt like an echo of deceit, each glance exchanged between us laced with unspoken tension. I couldn't escape the image of Mark's hands on her, the whisper of his name on her lips, played in my mind like a haunting melody I couldn't silence. She tried to act normal, pretending as if we could move past this, as if she hadn't shattered everything we had built. But I wasn't the same man. I had become a stranger in my own home, a prisoner to my own thoughts. Derek had warned me to keep my emotions in check, to think before I acted. But the rage inside me was beginning to boil over. One evening, Olivia stood in the kitchen, slicing vegetables for dinner. The casual domesticity of it all made me sick. She looked up at me with weary eyes. "Lucas, we need to talk." I scoffed, crossing my arms. "Talk about what? How you let another man inside our home. Or how you lied to my face over and over again." She flinched at my words but stood her ground. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we have a family, and I want to fix this. I need to fix this." I laughed bitterly. "Fix this? Olivia, you were carrying his child. Were you planning on fixing that too?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. I had spent too many nights drowning in sorrow. Now I was just angry. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered, gripping the edge of the counter. "I was lonely, Lucas. You were always working, always distracted. Mark was just there. He made me feel wanted." Wanted? I slammed my fist against the table. "Do you even hear yourself? You destroyed everything for a cheap thrill, for a man who didn't even stay. And now what? You want me to just forgive and forget?" "I want us to try," she pleaded. For Ava. For us. I shook my head, running a hand through my hair. You think love is enough to erase what you did? That trust can be rebuilt overnight? I can't just look at you and not see him. I can't touch you without wondering if he touched you the same way. She wiped her tears away, her lips quivering. Then what do you want, Lucas? Revenge? To hurt me like I hurt you? I opened my mouth but hesitated. Did I want revenge? Did I want her to suffer as I had? The thought had crossed my mind more times than I'd like to admit. But even as my anger raged inside me, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't stay in this house much longer. That night, I packed a bag. Olivia begged me not to go, but I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I needed space. I needed clarity. I drove to Derek's place, the only refuge I could think of. He opened the door, already expecting me. You look like hell, he said, stepping aside to let me in. I collapsed onto his couch, exhaling heavily. I don't know what to do, man. Derek sat across from me, a serious expression on his face. You have two choices, Lucas. You either fight for your marriage or you let it go. But whatever you decide, make sure it's what you really want. Not just what anger is telling you to do. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. What if I don't know what I want anymore? Derek sighed. Then you take the time to figure it out. Because if you make the wrong move, there's no going back. As I sat in the dimly lit room, I realized something. I had spent so much time grieving the betrayal that I hadn't considered what came next. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure if I was ready to find out. The weight of betrayal hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating every breath, poisoning every thought. Olivia's pregnancy had been a ticking time bomb. But now, the explosion had left nothing but wreckage in its wake. The night after the revelation, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Olivia and Mark, entangled in a twisted reality I never signed up for. I had spent years building a life with her, and now, in the cruelest of ironies, she was carrying a child that might not even be mine. Morning arrived too soon. Olivia sat across from me at the kitchen table, her face pale, her hands trembling around a mug of untouched coffee. I could feel the distance between us, an abyss that stretched wider with every passing second. Lucas, please, I need to explain, she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her own guilt. I scoffed, rubbing my temple as a bitter chuckle escaped my lips. Explain? What exactly is there left to explain? Olivia, you slept with him. You might be carrying his child. What part of this am I not grasping? Tears welled in her eyes, but I had no sympathy left to offer. Not after what she had done. Not after she had shattered everything we were supposed to be. It was never supposed to happen. She started, but I slammed my fist against the table, making her flinch. But it did. And now we're here. So tell me, Olivia, whose baby is it? Silence. Heavy, damning silence. And then, she whispered, I don't know. The room spun. The nausea churned in my stomach. A cruel reminder that I had lost control of everything. This wasn't just infidelity. It was chaos, destruction, and the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You need to get a paternity test. She nodded, swallowing hard. I will. But, Lucas, I love you. I want to fix this. I laughed, a hollow sound that held no warmth. Love? Love doesn't do this, Olivia. Love doesn't lie, cheat, or betray. She sobbed, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Please, Lucas, let's not throw away everything we've built. I shook my head. You already did. I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving her in a puddle of regret. The weight of everything pressed down on me as I drove aimlessly, my mind a storm of emotions. I needed air, space, clarity, anything but the suffocating reality I had just left behind. The truth was, no matter what the test said, nothing could erase what had been done. The affair, the lies, the possibility of another man's child. This wasn't something we could simply move past. And deep down, I knew, my wife's affair was just the beginning. The weight of the truth pressed down on me like an unbearable burden. Olivia's pregnancy, Mark's smugness, and Derek's reluctant admissions had all shattered what was left of my trust. Yet I wasn't done. There was still one final piece of the puzzle missing. I spent the next few days in a haze, torn between wanting to confront Olivia one last time and simply walking away without looking back. But I needed closure. I needed to hear it from her lips. The night before the paternity test results were due, I walked into the house to find Olivia sitting on the couch, her face pale, eyes rimmed with red. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. "Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I need to tell you something before you get those results." I crossed my arms, keeping my expression cold. "Go ahead." She took a deep breath. "The baby, it's yours." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You expect me to believe that?" Tears streamed down her face. "I swear, Lucas, I know how it looks, but after everything, I had to tell you the truth. I made a mistake, an unforgivable one, but the baby isn't Mark's. It's yours." For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. After all the lies, all the deceit, was this just another desperate attempt to keep me from leaving? "If it's mine, why did you lie? Why let me believe otherwise?" My voice cracked despite my attempt to keep it steady. She buried her face in her hands. "Because I was afraid. I thought if you believed it was Mark's, you'd leave. That you'd walk away before I had the chance to fix things." Anger boiled inside me. "So you manipulated me into believing I wasn't the father? You let me go through hell just to keep me tied to you." "I was desperate, Lucas," she sobbed. "I didn't know what else to do. I was afraid you'd never forgive me." I clenched my fists, my chest tight with rage and heartbreak. "You already, Ma." Olivia had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and no amount of truth could change that. I drove away without opening the results. As I left town, leaving behind the ruins of my marriage, one thought echoed in my mind. Some betrayals cut too deep to ever heal. That's the end.